I remember playing video games with my brother in the 90s, and we'd get these games and be like, oh, this is so cool, this is so good. I can't imagine what these games will be like in another 10 to 20 years. It's going to be amazing, right? And I think that's been a fallacy that people throughout time have fallen for. I mean, imagine sitting at the feet of Socrates or Aristotle and just having your mind blown and be like, if this is what we're thinking today, if this is what we're hearing, if this is how incredibly complex human reasoning and thoughts can become, just imagine where human beings will be in the future. Or the disciples sitting at the feet of Jesus, listening to the Sermon on the Mount and being blown away like this is the state of moral philosophy. Where on earth will we be in 2,000 years? Yeah, we'll be trying to answer the big questions like, what does it mean to be a woman? And I'm sure you, like me, have looked at this absurdity and just thought, how is it they don't know what a woman is? How is it we have a sitting Supreme Court justice now that claims she can't identify a woman because she's not a biologist? Which is just a smug retort, because we all know what women are. This isn't a deep or profound question. A judge of all things should be able to discern that difference, let alone a 2-year-old. So I've put a lot of thought into this, and I think to understand the why here, you have to understand the debate that has been going on between collectivists and lovers of individual liberty and freedom. And so this argument has been raging, I don't know, probably since time immemorial, but certainly over the past 100 years or so. And there was all sorts of fake news and media manipulation designed to make collectivism look more wonderful than it was. But eventually, on December 25th, 1991, the USSR collapsed, and this is when the left definitively lost the argument. And it was one of those things, if you're not paying attention to the intellectual arguments, you kind of blink and you miss it, because the world just went on existing the way it always has, except that the argument had been lost. Reason and logic had disproven all of these ideas that sound so wonderful come together right now over me, where a 5th grader will understand, well, I don't want to work hard for an A and then have to share my score with the dumb kids. And so leftist intellectuals came to a fork in the road. They could either modify their beliefs and go down some sort of maybe caring libertarian-esque ideology with a focus on like a cultural or a culture of kindness and unity, trying to foster the better sounding aspects of leftism that way. Or they could, double down on top-down control, centralized power, and forced community. And I guess I don't need to tell you which direction they went. But as a consequence of losing the intellectual argument, reason, logic, and debate became the enemy. You didn't want to hold a debate because you would lose it and it would make you look bad, right? You didn't want to encourage logical thinking because then your students would grow up and they'd realize, oh, this is a really bad idea. And then, of course, they feel they would have lost to the hated right-wing Christians, and then you'd look at the ideas of maybe there is a creator and God. If there's a God, then I got to deal with that, and it takes away the do as thou wilt to rule the world as I see fit kind of idea. And so they abandoned the search for truth. And in a way, they've been going through the stages of grief. If you ever look at that, you see these different stages. People, when they lose something they love and they grieve and go through anger and denial and all this. And it's a lot what we see, right? It's a lot of what we see. And so trying to kind of piece together this denial of the obvious, because that's what it is. They know what a woman is. They're just pretending that they don't. Sometimes I got to turn to people that are smarter than myself to explain it. And then, I can then think about that and maybe share it with you. As you all know, I'm a fan of Bruce Charlton's notions. I'll make the absurd statement that I don't agree with everything he says, which you can say about anybody at any time. I don't even agree with myself looking back at times. So, for whatever reason, people have to say that. But he made a post on July 11th. He says, "Doubting the obvious, asserting the absurd, how evil assumptions and motivations negate the possibility of coherence." He writes, "I continue to be amazed that so many people get drawn into trap debates in which somebody pretends not to understand the obvious or to believe the absurd. These things cannot be debated because when an antagonist has adopted this level of dishonesty, then evidence and logic will be ineffectual. It's a technique, you see. When this level of dishonesty is adopted, you negate the power of evidence, reason, and logic. They no longer work. And if logic no longer works, you then live in a world where truth no longer matters. Truth is relative. Your truth, my truth, their truth. And then I guess you can just imagine a better world or be a dreamer or whatever nonsense. You ever watch a basketball game when there's a team, they're down by like 20 points? And so the team that's up, they just try to play, more or less standard game, get it to their best shooter. But the other team keeps trying to delay the game, right? They keep fouling the other player. It happened a lot with Shaq. They'd always try and foul Shaq at the end of games, and he'd struggle his way through free throws. The team that's winning doesn't try to delay the game. So back to Bruce, he references a debate between Bertrand Russell and F.C. Copleston on the existence of God, where Russell's main tactic was to claim he didn't understand what it meant for a God to exist. Despite the fact, of course, this discussion has been going on for thousands of years. What he says is Russell was, dishonestly, debating from assumptions that ruled out any possibility of coherent argument at the level of generality. He was forcing discussion down to a level of technical micro-specialization that, however resolved, left the main question untouched. Because the obvious is being denied and the absurd is being propagated, the debate is forced down to the level of technical micro-issues where only specialists can operate, and where the conclusions are too small-scale to affect the broader policies, and where the debate can be moved back and back interminably. My point is that this debate can run on forever, and in the end we are no closer to acknowledging the obvious facts. Like the basketball game, if you can just continue dragging it out on and on and on, eventually you might be able to squeak out enough points to win. He continues, this simulated dumbness is therefore a powerful tactic when used by those with power. And where proof and disproof are placed in a context where the most important issues are relativized and subdivided out of existence, and where proof and disproof have zero acknowledged meaning and no necessary implications. And so those with power can then rely on things like force, censorship, emotional manipulation, guilt-tripping, astroturfing, gaslighting, all to simply maintain power. And the more people they can get to bow down to this absurdity, to partake in it, to repeat it, to identify with it, or heck, to even engage with it and debate it, the more that they then have a population who is unable to challenge their rule. I've seen this with my debates with my neighbors on issues, about, hey, there might be some blackouts coming because of all these silly green energy policies, and they want to say, well, why are you talking about this? Politics has no place here. It's like, let's get back to the subject I brought up, which is possible impending blackouts. And of course, they don't want to talk about that. They want to continue to distract, to pull you away from the subject at hand. It's that extremely dishonest technique of simulated dumbness. It allows them to delay the game, and hence avoid acknowledging the obvious, and so protecting their failed ideology with the power that they have accrued and enacting it through force. which then you impose force upon formerly free people, you get back to, well, this is the origin of evil. Taking away the free will of human beings, using either overt force or covert manipulations in order to continue perpetrating lies versus seeking truth. And this is why we are living in a decline. It wasn't the enforcement of certain ideas that were just value neutral that made human society better. It was the discovery of truths. And the more you align yourself with truth, the more there is advancement, or do I dare even use, the more there is progress. I use the simple analogy of a bridge. The better your math, the more accurate, the more precise, the better bridge you can build. It is not the better you can dream, the better bridge you get, or the cooler the design looks. There is certain designs that are functional, and there are certain designs that are absurd. However beautiful, they're absurd. But if you won't let go of your delusions, if you won't let go of your absurdities, if you continue to double down on systems that we know through experience do not work, you're going to have to continue reliving the tragedies of the 20th century.